As the White House struggles to hold on to the hearts and minds of the Democratic Party faithful, the Tea Party's battle for the hearts and minds of the Republican Party rages on, at least until Election Day. And then maybe the battle will turn into a massacre. The list of establishment Republican candidates for the Senate defeated by Tea Party candidates grew longer as the primaries wore on. In Kentucky, Rand Paul beat Republican establishment candidate Trey Grayson. In Nevada, Tea Party favorite Sharon Engel took down former Nevada Republican Party chairwoman Sue Loudon. In Utah, Mike Lee took the nomination, ousting incumbent Republican Senator Bob Bennett. In Florida, Marco Rubio was beating Florida Governor Charlie Crist so badly in the polls that Crist dropped out of the Republican primary to run as an independent. That same night, Joe Miller won a tight race in Alaska against Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski. And 2 weeks ago in Delaware, Christine, no relation, O'Donnell beat Republican Congressman Mike Castle. Two of these losers have not given up. Lisa Murkowski is now desperately mounting a write-in campaign in Alaska, knowing full well the last time a senator won a write-in campaign was 3 years before the 53-year-old Murkowski was born. Charlie Crist had to leave the Republican Party to get his name on the November ballot as an independent, thereby turning the Florida Senate race into a three-way. Marco Rubio, an opponent of the president's health care plan, taxpayer-funded stem cell research, and the confirmations of both Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan to the Supreme Court, is running at 40% in the polls, while opposition to Rubio is running at 51%, but is split between Governor Crist and Democratic Congressman Kendrick Meek. I spoke with Governor Crist in an interview taped earlier tonight. Governor Crist, thanks for joining us tonight.
Lawrence, great to be with you, and let me publicly congratulate you on the new show. I think it's great, and it's an honor to be on in your first week.
Thanks, Governor. Great to have you. You've said that running as an independent now has liberated you. You feel it's been a liberating feeling from being a Republican. What positions do you hold now that you could not hold when you were a Republican candidate?
Well, nothing's really changed in that regard. It's a lot more quick to be able to give the response when you're talking about things of supporting education, supporting teachers, making sure that we protect the environment. These are always issues that have been important to me, but it is so liberating in terms of the context of this year particularly because, as you know, the Republican Party, or I should say some in the Republican Party, have taken a very hard turn to the right, like my opponent, Marco Rubio. And as a result of that, I think it's very important to the people of Florida, I think the people of our country, to have common sense candidates. And I've always tried to take a common sense point of view, regardless of what the issue might be, whether it's education, whether it's jobs, the economy, reducing taxes, standing up for the people of Florida, making sure that they're safe in their communities and homes, and that we fight for teachers and students. Those have always been issues that are very, very important to me. And even as a Republican governor, I would reach across the aisle, work with Democrats, Republicans, independents, in order to try to improve the quality of life for my fellow Floridians. That's what I would like to do in the United States Senate, again, for my fellow Floridians and for America.
Governor, are there any positions in the past that you took as a loyal Republican that you now would not take?
No, not really. Let me give you an indication of one that I think may be illustrative. I'm personally pro-life. But this year in the Florida legislature, they passed a bill that would have required an ultrasound be performed on any woman who was contemplating such, and also would require that she have to pay for it. I ended up vetoing that bill because, you know, when it comes to the overall spectrum of things, my view is tax cuts, hell yes. Your government in your bedroom, hell no. And that sort of really defines Charlie Crist in terms of, I'm a frugal guy. I want to be as careful with the public's dollars as possible, especially in this economy. But I don't want to impose my personal will on other people either. We're an independent people, we Americans, and I think that none of us like to be told what to do on any issue, and I think that we need to respect the rights of others. And I think that pretty much illustrates, you know, my point of view as it relates relates to an issue of social matters. I'm a fiscal conservative who's a social moderate who wants to respect all and make sure that the views of the people are put first rather than the views of the party.
How about what you said in 2008 as a loyal Republican when Sarah Palin was on the vice presidential slot in the ticket, and you said that she would do, quote, a great job as president, not just as vice president. Sarah Palin would do a great job as president. Having had some time to think about that, is that a position you would reconsider?
Well, you know, my concern in this race are the Sarahs that live in Florida, to be perfectly candid with you. And I'm fighting for them and to give them an independent voice so that, you know, in Washington they can have an honest broker to try to move forward on jobs, on economic development, on reducing taxes. I mean, we've got a perfect example of how broken Washington is right now. You have a Democratic president of the United States who proposes tax cuts, and you have the Republicans who say no. I mean, you know, if that's not the town standing on its head, I don't know what is. And that's why I think it's so important that we have people to go forward, you know, whether they're Michael Bloomberg or Joe Lieberman or Charlie Crist, who can be honest brokers and say, you know what, Republicans have good ideas about cutting the deficit or reducing taxes. Democrats probably have good ideas in investing in a clean economy and technology to produce more jobs. Only I, in this race, can put that forward. I mean, I've got two partisan opponents, one hard left on the Democratic side and one hard right on the Republican side. But I think really what Florida wants is a common sense approach and a little Florida common sense in Washington on behalf of our people.
Governor, it seems what you're caught in the middle of is this fight over the soul of the Republican Party, with Tea Party candidates coming in from, as you put it correctly, I think, the extreme right, challenging you, challenging other more establishment Republican candidates around the country. You're one of the few establishment Republican candidates, at least previously establishment Republican, still on his feet in some way. You're running second in the polls in Florida right now, but within striking distance. Is there a real fight over the soul of the Republican Party in the outcomes that we're going to see in this election, especially in these Senate races with the Tea Party candidates?
I don't think there's any question about it, Lawrence. In fact, you know, I enjoyed being a Republican of the party of Abraham Lincoln and Teddy Roosevelt and Ronald Reagan. Common sense people who cared about the environment, cared about fundamental fairness to people, talk about the great emancipator, Abraham Lincoln, and somebody who was always civil to others, Ronald Reagan. What we've seen, at least in some areas of the Republican Party, the most active areas of the Republican Party, is more of a shrill tone, if you will. And I think it's unfortunate. Instead of the big tent that Jack Kemp used to talk about, it seems to be a shrinking tent. And, you know, some of these people have been nominated around the country. I don't know, you know, in 5 weeks from tonight how they're going to be doing, but my guess would be not so well. I think that, you know, especially in Senate races, you have an entire state that's going to weigh in on a race rather than just a district, and that's a much broader audience, if you will, a bigger jury, so to speak. And I think that because of that, you're going to see a different turnout in the United States Senate than I think you might in the House of Representatives. But only time will tell. You know, 5 weeks in election is like 5 years, so we'll know when November 2nd comes.
Now, Republicans are unifying around their nominees, even around Christine O'Donnell in Delaware and some of the flakier nominees that they've ended up with this year. But longtime Republican strategist Richard Viguerie said something very interesting in the Sunday New York Times this week. He said, we're all on the same page until the polls close on November 2nd, then a massive, almost historic battle for the heart and soul of the Republican Party begins. Is that the way you see it, that this unity that the party is pretending to have around some of these nominees is a mirage, and no matter what the outcome, whether those nominees win or lose, the Republican Party is going to have to figure out what it really stands for after this election?
Oh, I don't think there's any other way to put it. I think that's exactly right. I think that you know, once it becomes November 3rd, the day after the election, it's off to the races as it relates to the presidential campaigns, and it's in that structure that you'll see both on the Republican side and what's going to be the future. You know, is it going to be a party that Jack Kemp used to talk about that had a big tent, that wanted to be more broad in its appeal, or is it going to be what we've seen this year, a steadily shrinking party Party that said, you know, you have to be first conservative enough, but then it went to the next level that really turned me off. You have to be pure enough. And I'm not sure I know what that means. I just know I don't want to be a part of that. I think that, you know, America is a place where we respect independence. We respect the fact that you ought to have the freedom to determine your own destiny and your own future. And what we've seen in a segment of the Republican Party does not embrace that. And I think that's unfortunate. I mean, there's a lot of good, reasonable Republicans that are still left. My mom and dad are still Republican. My wife is still Republican. But I can tell you, I got a lot of Democratic friends in Florida these days, and I'm grateful to them, particularly Robert Wexler, who just, former congressman, endorsed our campaign on Sunday. I was very pleased and honored by that.
Governor, quickly before we go, if you are lucky enough to be sworn in as Senator Crist by Vice President Joe Biden, will you then, on your very first vote for the Democrat as majority leader or the Republican as majority leader?
Well, first, I hope I have that dilemma to face, and I believe that I will, because, you know, Floridians are a common-sense bunch of people. But I think that the truth is I want to ask tough questions of both the Republicans and the Democrats if I have the honor of winning. Who's going to help fight for more jobs for the people of Florida? Who's going to work hard to improve our economy? Who's going to protect the Florida environment and help us to do that, the Everglades, and make sure that we have maybe a national catastrophic fund? Those are the kinds of things and the answers that I'll need to get before I decide one way or the other, or to just remain an independent United States Senator and fight for the people of Florida as best I can.
All right, so still undecided on your first vote in the Senate. Governor Crist, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Lawrence, great to be with you.